So here we're going to be kind of tying a variant pattern, and I just love the kind of the ingenuity involved in this. It's at the end of the day, it's a hare's ear, but the way it's tied is really innovative, and I really enjoy it. So I thought I'd give it a go. So for thread, we're actually going to use copper wire, and we're going to start that copper wire right here behind the eye of the hook, and this is extra small copper wire. We're going to take some wraps down the shank of the hook here with our copper wire, building what will be our thorax for the fly. Being a hare's ear, it's going to have a little bit of a bigger thorax, so we'll go ahead and take a few thread wraps, or wire wraps, I guess is what you'd have to call it here, to get some of this bulk up and going here. And I really don't want to crowd the eye of the hook here. So we've got that nicely started there. So the first material that we're going to tie on is going to be a piece of pheasant tail. So here are my fibers. I've got them perpendicular to the stem on this feather, which will help those tip ends line up. And from there, I'm just going to work on ripping that right off of the stem here. And I'm going to come grab my scissors and make a little cut to get rid of the curlies, just because I do that sometimes. And from here, I don't want to lose the alignment on those tails. So I'm always really careful to make sure that every time I switch hands or anything that I'm pinching pretty tight. This is going to be, it's going to have a shorter tail. That's how hare's ears are usually tied. And so I'm going to place it probably right there in that vicinity. And then I'm just going to tie right over the top of this pheasant material here. Try to keep that on top, and then we are going to move back towards the back end of the hook here. And I still have that tag end piece of copper wire, which we're going to end up using as our ribbing for this pattern. So we're going to just take this back to about where the barb of the hook would normally be. Make sure we've got that tail nice and standing up there, and doing my best to avoid the hook point, which is my one-way speed trip to disaster. Let's see how we're looking there. Let me take another wrap. That should do us good. Okay, so we've got our pheasant tail, and the tail is the pheasant tail in. I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra copper wire here, and I'm going to turn right to the bouncing along. Sorry, that's really bad taste to do that, but I've got my hare's ear, and I'm just going to take my fingers here, and I'm just going to, pluck. This is a lighter bleached one. I'm going to take some hairs from the ear. I'm just plucking them away with my hands. You can probably hear it, even though you can't see it. We'll end up with kind of this gob of just kind of like that. That's going to be our dubbing, and I'm just going to mix that between my fingers here. So I get those guard hairs kind of mixed in with all the other kinds of hairs, and this material stay on the piece of wire here for me. And I'm going to just hold that straight up and slide it down just a little bit. And I'll kind of tighten as I go along here. That's what I usually do when I'm dubbing. Trying to get those first copper wraps kind of covered up, even though I know it's not overly essential here. With this particular pattern, any gold that's showing, or any copper that's showing through here, actually is probably more of a bonus than it is anything else. So we're just going to keep working our way up the hook here, and we are just about right out of dubbing. So I'm going to go back to my hare's mask again and dump this on our piece of copper wire here. And let that slide on down, and we'll just continue to make our progress up the hook here, tightening it down a little bit as we go along. And we're going to want this front portion that's going to be the more or less the thorax of this fly to be a little bit thicker. So I'm really not going to be shy. I'll come back through and pick some of that fur off. So I want it buggy. I'm not quite sure I want it that buggy. So we're going to go ahead and dub that. This should be the last bunch that we'll end up putting on this for our dubbing here. We'll just take a few wraps up towards the eye of the hook, making some tightening turns as I get up here, and that's exactly what I want it to, is what you're seeing here. Is I do want it to actually be much bulkier up here at this thorax area, so I'm just perfectly fine with that kind of looking a little bit chubby and chunky right there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and let my wire kind of stay put right there. So from there, what we're going to do now, we're going to use that tail end piece when we tied our copper on from the very beginning, and we're going to take a few wraps. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to wrap those wraps over. We're going to bend our pheasant tail fibers backwards here, and have the wire go over the top of those, and that's how we're going to kind of tie them in. So that's just kind of a preview. So we're just going to take 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to pull these fibers back for that next wrap. So that I've now tied in what's going to be the wing case on this fly. And I'm going to go ahead and take these wraps up here to right behind the eye of the hook. And I'm just going to take a couple of wraps there. And I'm just going to let that sit right there in position just like that. So now that we're this far into it, we're going to go ahead and grab these fibers, these pheasant tail fibers, and we're going to, they don't know which way they want to go. I keep folding them backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and they're probably just completely lost, wondering what the hell is going on here. But I do want to get them kind of spread out a little bit over the top there, and that's why I'm kind of looking down on it from my angle. And to an extent probably covering up your angle a little bit. But hopefully you'll be able to see that as I turn. There we have our wing case made out of this copper, or out of the pheasant tail, tied down with our copper wire. We didn't crowd the eye, so I do have some space to take a wrap or two underneath that pheasant tail here. And then I'm just going to come right in with my scissors here, and we're going to go ahead and cut off the extra pheasant tail fibers and the one that just jumped and got away, just like so. And then I'm just going to clean up those butt ends here at the eye of the hook, and build not a big head, but you know, just a regular head here, just like so. And believe it or not, we will actually, in theory, break out our whip finisher here. So here we go. We've got our whip finisher on our copper wire. We're going to take a couple, like maybe 3 turns or 4. I'm going to let that wire come right off of there. we're just going to pull that up and somewhat tight. So with that, I'm going to tighten up my wire just a little bit and just make sure that I've got a pretty good tight pull down on it, that it's, that's not going to go anywhere at all. And just like when we usually work with wire, here's our tag end that we had before. So we'll just use our friction method of kind of rotating that around a little bit while we pull on it. And being extra small, it shouldn't be too hard to break off. Same thing here. We're just going to take this and let that come right off just like that. From here, I'm going to come in and I do like a fuzzy hare's ear for sure. But we're going to trim just a hair. Oh gosh, I always say that when I tie a pheasant or a hare's ear, and I don't do it on purpose. But it is kind of funny that I keep saying hair when I'm tying with a hair mask. So I've kind of got that where I want. I've got one little straggler here that I'm not too overly pleased with, so I'm going to get rid of him. A few pokey eppies in that vicinity that we'll just go ahead and take care of, just like that. And what we're going to do next, now that I've cleaned that all the way up so it's not buggy anymore, we're going to go and grab our brush and try to make this a little bit more buggy. But the key is I want the bugginess to be right here towards the front. So I'm just going to, just lightly pull down with this brush here a little bit. Trying to keep that up towards the front of the fly and not towards the back end of the body of the fly. And with that, we're getting a halfway decent looking hare's ear. So yeah, I'll go back in and just me and my OCD. Certainly is going to come back in here and trim a few things that I don't like, but I over tie all of my flies, and I don't need to, but I really can't help it. So there you have it. Again, it's a hare's ear, but what I really love about the way that it's tied, and I think it was David McPhail that I was watching tie it, is first of all the innovation of tying this with wire instead of thread. So we tied this whole thing with copper wire, which was cool. And then we used the tag end of our copper wire to hold in. Keep in reserve to use as our ribbing on the fly as we move forward, and we put our pheasant tail down and tied it all down with the copper wire, certainly making this fly a little bit heavier. And then we moved back up to the front, and we locked down the wing case there with our copper wire, built ourselves a copper wire head. So really kind of an interesting approach, and from here I will build some head cement on those wraps and we'll be good to go.